Hi everyone, my name is Richard. Welcome to the Tasmania Museum and Art Gallery for another mystery Facebook Live tour. We're in the central gallery of TMAG, and before we do anything else I'd like to invite you to join me in paying respect to the Muwinina people, who are the original custodians of this part of Lutruwita, Tasmania. We're at Nipaluna, Hobart, and I'd also like you to join me in paying respect to the whole of the First Peoples community in Lutruwita, Tasmania, the old people, today's community, including the elders and the generations to come, who are the continuing custodians of this special place. Now, if you're a regular visitor to TMAG, you might remember that way off in that far corner on the this ground floor level, there's a gallery all about the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger. And next Monday is a special anniversary for the thylacine. It's the 7th of September. And on the 7th of September 1936, I think if I do the maths, that's 84 years ago. That's the day that the last thylacine, the last known thylacine, died in captivity in Tasmania. There's been no evidence of another one existing since then. People have found tracks or droppings, but there's been no photograph, no animals being killed by a car and brought in. No one's found one and captured it, despite a lot of people trying. So that anniversary of the last one's death, the 7th of September, every year we remember that day, and it's called National Threatened Species Day. So today we're going to be talking about some threatened species, threatened plants and animals in Lutruwita, Tasmania. Mostly we're going to be talking about birds, but we're going to start off by having a short talk with Lucienne Rickard, who's an artist here at TMAG. And a lot of you will have seen her work already. She's working in the Link building just out here. And here's Lucienne Rickard. She's got this amazing project called Extinction Studies. Can you just introduce the project briefly, Lucienne, for people who aren't familiar with what you're doing?
Sure. So the project's all about raising awareness about extinction rates, both in Australia but around the world as well. So what I'm doing is I've devoted a year and a half of my life to be here at TMAG, drawing really recently extinct species from all over the world. And I put lots of time into these drawings. I really try and make them the best drawings I can, make them really beautiful. And then as soon as they're finished, I rub them out and then I draw the next one. So I'm doing that over and over again for a year and a half. So
if you look closely at the piece of paper, you can sort of see the shadows of some of the previous plants and animals that Lucienne's drawn, the sort of ghosts of the animals left, plants and animals left behind. And then down below the piece of paper, you can see the incredible collection of razor shavings and that have come off when she's rubbed them out. And also there's a few jars of pencil shavings there too, where she's sharpened her pencils. It is an amazingly powerful work that you're doing here. Could you talk a little bit about this particular butterfly that you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So this butterfly is called Xerxes blue. So it was from the peninsula of San Francisco. So it's not an Australian butterfly, but we should still care about it, even if it wasn't one of our own. I'm not using coloured pencils for this project, and that's a real shame with this butterfly because, as you can probably guess from the name, Xerxes blue was a really beautiful blue colour. Blues and purples and, sort of lovely chocolatey browns around the edges. So the colours were just stunning. It was a really beautiful butterfly. And its extinction has been put down to a redevelopment of the peninsula region of San Francisco. So they decided to make lots of new buildings and, shopping precincts and stuff, and they wiped out the particular kind of tree, the one kind of tree that Xerxes blue fed on. So it couldn't survive because it didn't have any food, and it probably nested on that tree as well, and it just didn't have anywhere to live. So that's what happened to it. And it's the kind of thing that a lot of people aren't really aware of when they make a new building or they clear anything off the land before they do something new there. They probably just don't realise that there's lots of species out there that need that plant for their home or their food.
Yeah, I mean, habitat destruction is a huge issue for threatened species all around the world, including in Tasmania. I mean, one very special thing about this particular drawing is the scales. I don't know if we can get a closer look at the drawing itself, but Lucienne has been drawing every individual scale on the wings of the butterfly. There are probably millions of them. And how long has this drawing taken you so far?
I think I'm about a month into this drawing, maybe a little bit longer, and I think I'd have at least 3 more weeks to go. So that's a lot of hours. I was trying to figure it out before. Unfortunately, my maths is not very good, but we've got, let's say, 2 months worth of work all up in the end, and then that's 5 days a week, 6 hours a day. So it'll be hundreds of hours of work. And I guarantee that it'll take no longer than 5 minutes to erase that hundreds of hours worth of work. So, yeah. But I thought that I'm trying to draw people's attention to the really interesting things that these species had that we've lost because of them becoming extinct. And for me, one of the most interesting and one of the coolest things about butterflies and moths is the fact that their wings are covered in all these tiny scales that our human eyes aren't good enough to see, but we can only see them under a microscope. But they're there and they're beautiful and they're so intricate and detailed. So I'm doing my best to draw every single one.
Thanks so much, Lucienne.
That's all right.
We're going to head downstairs now and we'll actually have a look at a butterfly under a microscope, not one of these ones. But yeah, come in and have a look at Lucienne drawing away. TMAG's open to the public. You need to book to come in, but it's quite easy to come in. So we're just going to go downstairs into the bond store. And while we do that, I might just explain some of the terms we're going to be using today. So a species is it's defined as the largest group of a particular kind of organism, like a particular kind of plant or a particular kind of animal, that can breed together in nature, in a natural environment, with other members of that same species. So that's one way. Some other animals, can breed together, like a horse and a donkey can have a baby called a mule, but the mules can't breed. So a horse is a different species to a donkey. We're also going to be talking about the ways that threatened species are categorised or listed, and there's several terms that are used. Extinct is a pretty obvious one, because if something's extinct, like the thylacine, in Australian terms, it's extinct if it hasn't been known to exist for a 50-year period. So officially, I suppose, the thylacine was declared extinct in 1986, 50 years after the last one died in 1936. And then in Tasmania, we also have the other categories of endangered. So if an animal's endangered, if the things that are causing it to be endangered keep going, then it's likely to become extinct. We also have vulnerable, a category called vulnerable. So again, if the conditions that are causing it to be vulnerable keep continuing, it will become endangered, likely to become endangered, and then it can become extinct. And we also have a category called rare, which means that an animal or a plant has a small population. It might be scattered across a large area, but it's something that you can't find in very many places or very many of them. There are different categories for Australian threatened species and Tasmanian threatened species. Anyway, here we are in the bomb store. I might put some information up on the Facebook thing about those categories later on. We just met with Lucienne and saw that amazing butterfly drawing. Come and have a look at what a butterfly's wing looks like under a microscope. This isn't that particular butterfly species she was talking about, but it does have a similar blue patterns on the wing. You can just see a little bit of blue on the wing there under the microscope. And then if you have a look at the screen just there, you can see these tiny, tiny little scales. There are thousands and thousands of them that make up the colour and pattern on the wing. You can imagine them like thousands of tiny little post-it notes kind of stuck to the wall, and together they make a pattern. These butterflies' wings, some of them have a pigment in them, you know, so the colour of the actual scale gives the wing the colour or the pattern, but some of them diffract the light. The light bounces off them in particular ways and makes the colour that way. You see some birds with that kind of shine or iridescence on their plumage as well. Well, a lot of butterflies have that too. Let's just have a closer look, because I can zoom in a bit more. Which way are we going? That way. So, yeah, you can see those scales there. So, I mean, I've always kind of had this connection with nature, but when I actually got to use a microscope and look at butterflies' wings for the first time, you know, it was like a whole new world opened up for me. And yeah, there's a scale in nature. You can work really big, you can work really small, and see some amazingly beautiful things. Now, that's our butterfly's wing. I thought what I'd do now is show you another wing under the microscope by a local threatened species, and that is the Mast Owl. And I'll just put the wing under the microscope. We'll go back to the other scale and we'll have a look at the edge of its wing. I just need to get the focus. You can see, if you look closely, that the front edge of that wing has got all these hairy little feathers sticking out. I'm just going to get the other wing because I think it shows better on that one. Now, we know that owls have, yeah, you can see them better there. See those little hairy extensions to the wing. So they're tiny little feathers along the leading edge of the wing. As the wing goes through the air, these little feathers stick out in front. And we all know that owls have really good vision at night. They still need a little bit of light to be able to see, but they also have excellent hearing. Because they want to be able to hear their prey, they don't want to make any noise themselves. And so they're adapted for really silent flight. And these little feathers that stick out the front of the wing are part of that adaptation. So as it flies through the air, these tiny feathers break up the air and cause a tiny amount of turbulence. And then the wing can flow through that sort of broken, soft air without making a flapping noise. That's one way they can sneak up on their prey and not interfere with them hearing their prey by making a flapping sound themselves. Daytime birds don't have that kind of hairy wing edge. Like a daytime bird, like an eagle, can see its prey from a long way away, and it doesn't need to creep up on it silently like an owl does. So the Mast Owl is a threatened species in Tasmania. I've got a specimen here. You can see why it's called Mast Owl, because it has this amazing structure of feathers around its face. The ears are actually either side of the eyes, but they're hidden by the feathers. And that eye mask, or the face mask, acts a bit like a radar dish or a satellite dish to focus the sound to the ears. You know, it's a bit like if you hold your hand up to your ear, you can hear things better because you've increased the surface area of your ear by using your hand that way. They've also got amazingly soft feathers if you ever get a chance to touch one. Their feet too are really well adapted to silent hunting and grabbing things at night. So you can see they've got 2 toes forward and 2 toes back. So a really good opposable grip. Most birds have 3 at the front and 1 at the back, which is less opposable. Yeah. So if you're catching something you can't see in the dark, it's good to have 2 forward and 2 back. And the feathers go right down to their feet, which also helps them fly through the air silently. and also protects their legs a bit from, you know, when they catch something and it tries to bite them. They've got like extra covering over their feet. They've got beautiful camouflage as well, because during the day, I mean, sometimes mast owls will roost inside a hollow, but often they'll just be sitting on a branch in dense foliage in amongst the leaves somewhere. Now, why they're threatened? They're a top predator, so whatever happens to the environment has a bigger effect on them because there's fewer of them. A lot of them get killed by cars. Their bones are really light, and you know, if a car hits one as it flies low over the road at night, then that's really bad news for the owl. A lot of people use poison baits for rats, and these can eat the sick rat and gets what we call secondary poisoning, so that's a big problem too. Probably the worst thing, just as with the butterfly Lucienne was drawing, is habitat destruction. They need holes in trees for nesting, and you know, the big trees with the holes get cut down for firewood or for clearing for other purposes, and so there's nowhere for them to breed. But they are stunning birds. A lot of people seem to think that threatened species are something that you never see, you know, that they're tucked away in some distant island or jungle somewhere. But I've got a photo here of a mast owl sitting on a tree on the busiest corner of Hobart, right outside the museum, on the corner of Macquarie Street and Argyle Street. It's not there now. I look every day, just in case. It was there a few years ago for about a week. So right in the middle of a city on a really noisy intersection, you can find a threatened species sometimes. So the threatened species are all around us, which means we can do a lot to make sure that they don't become extinct. It's not someone else's problem. Let's go across and have a look at another threatened species in the next case. There's an owl, and there's also an eagle and a parrot. So we might have a quick look at those before we finish. We got time? I think so. Let's have a quick look. I'll take the eagle with me. So we're in the ground floor of the bomb store. The main focus of the exhibition is about, you know, when the Europeans arrived in Tasmania, what they thought about the natural environment here. Here's the mast owl here, like the one we just saw. But there's a lot of other threatened species in this case, including the eastern quoll, the spotty one, the Tasmanian devil, just around the corner. This way there's also the eastern barred bandicoot. And then that's the bandicoot in the corner just here, with the pink nose. It's got little stripes on its back. They're a bit hard to see. But I just wanted to talk briefly about that really beautiful bird, the little green one with the red face. That's the swift parrot, which is an endangered species. The main threats to that, again, habitat destruction. It needs holes to nest in old trees. There's also an introduced animal called the sugar glider that goes into those nest hollows and eats the eggs and the young and the adults that are looking after the eggs and the young. It's been a problem. They fly really fast. That's why they're called swift parrots. They're a parrot that migrates across Bass Strait and just breeds in Tasmania, but yeah, a lot of their habitat's been destroyed. And they also run into things a lot, into windows, into the wire around tennis courts and stuff like that, and a lot of them die that way. So that's the swift parrot. In this jar, looks a bit disgusting. That's the remains of a swift parrot after a sugar glider has eaten it. So scientists are trying really hard to find ways to protect the swift parrot and to make sure it doesn't go extinct. Let's have a quick look at the Wedgetailed Eagle. So here's some more threatened species: Tasmanian devils, the spotted-tailed quoll, and the Wedgetailed Eagle. So here's the big eagle up the top, maybe from around here. And that's the specimen that I've got in my arms, this species. Maybe if you can get a close-up look at their feet. Their feet are amazing. So big and strong. You can see the claws there against my thumb. This one was probably killed when it ran into power lines and got electrocuted, or touched two power lines at the same time and got electrocuted. A lot of them do die that way, and people were concerned about, the impact of wind farms on them as well. Some people still shoot wedge-tailed eagles, unfortunately, and they can get killed by cars too. I remember when I worked for Parks a few years ago now, one got hit by a trailer. It was on the road eating a road-killed animal, and then it lifted up when the car went past, but it got hit by the trailer and broke its wings and couldn't be rehabilitated. But they're amazing birds. The last time I saw one of these was actually on the weekend at Glenorchy. I stopped at the main intersection near the racecourse and looked up while I was stopped at the traffic lights, and there was a wedge-tailed eagle soaring overhead. So again, threatened species, they're everywhere, all around us, and there's a lot we can do. We can drive slowly, we can remove roadkill off the road if it's safe to do so, so things like devils and wedge-tailed eagles don't get hit by cars as well. Just to finish, let's go around the corner. We'll look at one more bird. I'll just pop that there. Probably the most critically endangered bird in Tasmania at the moment is the Orangebelly Parrot, which is this beautiful little one here. You probably just make out its orange belly there. There's a very small wild population of these. Again, this is one of the species that breeds in Tasmania but migrates across to the mainland for the winter. So they come down here, they need holes to nest in trees, they need a particular kind of vegetation to feed in, but the numbers have dropped really, really low. But there is a big captive breeding program. So a lot of effort's going in to try and keep these animals alive. It's kind of a really sad story, this case, because right underneath the Orangebelly Parrot are some bones of an extinct emu. There used to be two different kinds of emus in Tasmania, the Tasmanian mainland emu and one on King Island, and these are the bones from the extinct King Island emu. Everyone's heard of the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger, going extinct, but a lot of people don't understand that other species have gone extinct in Tasmania too. Now today we've really only been talking about the big animals, vertebrates, animals with backbones, birds and some of the mammals that we've briefly looked at in the cases, but there are over 700 species on the threatened species list in Tasmania, and a lot of them are plants and a lot of them are tiny little animals, invertebrates too. So we need to remember those and to think about all the things that we can do to make sure they don't go the way of the thylacine. We're going to finish up now. Thanks for your time and attention. I would like to thank the Friends of TMAG for supporting the Mystery Tour Live Facebook program and Veronica for filming. We'll see you next time, but come and visit us. See you later.